I am very honored to be joined by 4 panelists today. We're going to be specifically talking about people and culture and HR, how we're navigating kind of now and what's next. And I'm honored to be joined by 4 panelists that we have today. Betsy Vohs, who is with Studio BV in Minneapolis. We also have, oops, thanks. All right, my team is signaling to me that I should be telling you that you will get 1 CEU for this. And if you didn't register with an IIDA member number, please contact us at IIDA for the IDCEC numbers, and we'll take care of getting those credits for you. All right, so that was a nice bubble there. And there you go, perfect. Advance that slide. I already introduced my friend Betsy. Thank you for joining us, Betsy. We also have Meg Brown, who is Principal and Chief Talent Officer with Perkins and Will, and Ronda Green, who is the Director of Workplace Design and Furniture and Senior Project Manager with Oracle. And Ronda is going to be joining us with some insight from the end user client side of things. And Amy Storek, a longtime friend of IIDA, an industry member, and she is the Chief Revenue Officer with Pivot Interiors. Thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar in this really important conversation. I want to just start and ask each of you, and Meg, let me start with you. How are you doing? How are you and your team doing in navigating this time?
I think overall, as a team, we're doing really well. Everyone is really responsive, and being in human resources, we're focused on people. I think individually, it's taking more energy and stamina than I had anticipated, but I'm adapting to that. So each week it gets a little bit easier.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Betsy, how are things for you there in Minneapolis?
Snowy and cold, but I think pretty good. You know, we have a small business, so I think we actually earlier than our peers in this market actually went remote because of an exposure issue in our firm on a job site. And being that we are, you know, my firm's only 4.5 years old and very kind of a mobile workforce to begin with, we kind of jumped right in, and I honestly think, I was talking to my team last night, I think our work's even better right now. So I think that we're actually using this as inertia for our collaborative process. So feeling good in Minnesota.
Good. Glad to hear it. Rhonda, how's life at Oracle?
We're good as well. You know, our team specifically, we do a lot of travel for our real estate projects. And so we have to be effective and productive when we're mobile at project sites and whatnot. So we're used to working from a hotel room or from home quite a bit. I think we're all missing the personal side of things. Yeah. So we've just been trying to get creative with ways to connect on a personal level and just try to do some fun things throughout the week.
Yeah, perfect. And finally, Amy, what's life looking like for you? You've got a lot of kids in your house too.
Well, I said when I first jumped on, they're all tied up. The kids are locked in their rooms, and the dog's in her kennel. So hopefully we'll be free from any disruption. But no, everybody's good, and I think the morale on our team for the most part is high. You know, there's a part of our team that is still working to support critical, essential infrastructure businesses, and you know, we're a service provider, and so you know, it's been important for us also to think about you know, making sure that we're all whole and happy, not just those of us that are able to transition into working remotely more easily. So yeah. We check in frequently, but doing well.
Let's you know, when we were talking about having this conversation, and, you know, I don't want to hit hard the terms HR too much, but let's talk about how people are being supported in your organization. And HR, Meg, as you know, just isn't the only sector that is charged with supporting people in an organization. But I would like to start with you, since that is your bailiwick, and let's talk a little bit with each of the panelists about how your teams, your people are being supported during this time.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I think our technology group have been the heroes in all of this from a work
Amen. Yeah.
They mobilized very early on in anticipation of this, and we actually decided to work from home probably a week before everything started breaking. And through Microsoft Teams and all the other bells and whistles that we have going on with how to work virtually, I think that has been predominantly the number one thing that we hear that has made life easier for people.
Yeah.
Dovetailed over that, though, the people side, I think for everyone, it's about strategy and communication and trust and visibility and transparency. So the glue that I think that connects us is that there's a common purpose that still remains. Our CEO does a weekly virtual webcast. He will take questions from the audience in advance, but really addresses where we are, what we're doing, how we're feeling. And from an HR perspective, our team is also doing a weekly check-in, and we're doing a survey to see what the trends are and how people are adapting. Okay. Overall, it's been very, very positive. It's not been without challenges, I think, especially for working parents and especially single parents. But I hate to use the term the new normal because I think it's a little bit overused, but I think that we're all adapting to this and we're learning and we're growing, and I actually think we're becoming better for it.
I've got a dog barking in the background. A brand new 9-week-old puppy. Betsy, how you've got a small team, a small studio, and you guys are super tight and super close. How are you navigating supporting your folks?
I can echo everything on a small scale that Meg just said. I would say I try to meet people where they're at. I think we have half my team is parents of young children. So I think I've told them, you can work whatever hours you want in the 24-hour day that we have. If that's sharing with your partner on an overlap schedule. And, I've told them, if you can't work full time, 40 hours a week, it doesn't matter. We have a very flexible PTO policy in general. So It's just kind of comped. You do what you can do every week, and we're getting the work done, and it's high quality. And I feel like that trust piece and transparency is sort of how our studio really sticks together in general. So I've just been trying to meet people where they're at and support them. This is harder for folks that are parents. It's harder for people that have schedules that don't allow them to work our typical work day. So I think it's time to open up the door and let the work happen the best it can when it can.
Yeah. Ronda, Oracle is a large brand with such an incredible reputation, and you've got people everywhere. How are they being supported?
Yeah, I'll just speak for our team, specifically for the RENF organization. I think in listening to what you've both said about supporting each other and whatever's going on at home with their homeschooling or, with sharing the household duties with somebody else that's also working from home full time, just one little piece of advice that I would give for younger generation, just be realistic about what you can accomplish and be transparent about that. Right. We kind of have a saying in our group, do what you say what you do. And so if you can't get something done because you're also homeschooling 3 kids, just state that so that, other people that might have some extra time could help you out. And if you need help, ask for it. I think our management and our team has really been good about that. Me personally, I think the first week home, I was an emotional wreck trying to do everything. And I just kind of had to realign some expectations and just realize that, you can only do the best that you can do. And you just have to do the best that you can do no matter what's going on. And if you can't accomplish a task, just, let your management and your team know.
Yeah. We're all, I know the 4 of you, I think everybody, the folks that are listening, it feels like, despite the fact that we're physically separated, we are working longer and harder than ever before. We're also balancing with that a certain amount of emotional insecurity and fear about this, about coronavirus. What are some ways that people can keep their teams motivated and engaged and feeling a part of an organization, but also, I think, Ronda, as you just said, recognizing the humanity as well? What are some insights into recognition and motivation of a team? I'll open that up. Amy?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think I'll echo what was said before about increased communication and transparency. We have a very short daily check-in, and I think we've had to be more explicit about asking how, not just what's on deck, what the work is, but how people are doing, how they're feeling. There have been a lot of creative and special projects that we've initiated. And to see people jump on board with those, for instance, early on, we had to come up with protective equipment and clothing for our team, and so a bunch of us set about sewing masks, and so those kinds of projects that I think help our team, but also keep people connected. Have certainly kept morale high and given people a sense of purpose, I think, when maybe the work alone wasn't getting the job done.
Yeah.
I'll piggyback to that. I think there's the social side, which people are kind of taking into their own hands and doing all kinds of things. I mean, people are doing workplace, working from home contests. Who has the best design? People are getting their pets involved. I mean, all those kinds of things are happening organically, but on a firm-wide basis, we also want to keep people still connected to the business at large, but I think we've also taken an opportunity to expand learning. So we have, we're in week 2 of our weekly engagement forum. So last week, it's an hour long. It's open up to the entire firm, 2,400 people. And we talked about science and labs and healthcare as it relates to COVID-19 and what we're learning and what the takeaways are. And then this week, today, as a matter of fact, was focused on working from home, where from here, where we have thought leadership that's talking about everything from ergonomics to emotional wellness to clients to how the workspace is going to be designed, to what it's going to be like when people come back to work, how we're going to be more flexibility, probably be more personalizing different ways of working. We all have been, condensing our workspaces, open workspaces, sharing workspaces. Well, that might have to go away just because of the health factor, but that's okay. But the underlying theme is let's take what's going on with COVID-19 and find a way to connect it to 2 things. One, people and collaboration, but also thinking forward about our clients and how we're going to apply what we're learning in our own personal homes that's going to benefit them.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting moment when we all take that time to collect and aggregate what we've learned from this experience, what we've learned personally about ourselves, what we've learned about our organizations, what we've learned about brand and culture and community, and what we've learned about how people work. That's clearly at the core, how people convene, how people work, how people gather, how they behave in physical space. That's obviously core to what design does. And Betsy, any thoughts around how clients might be asking some different kinds of questions? Could your scope of work potentially change because of what we're living through right now?
Absolutely. I think as designers, we are so uniquely prepared to help people navigate space and human relationships. That is really why designers make things sing, is because they understand people and behavior, and then they can make that impact in a spatial environment. And so we are having clients, new clients, come to us and ask us, how do we lead and how do we change the way we work and our physical environment, but more, how do we lead as leaders in an environment where we're physically not together, or where we have to share things that have never been shared, or when honestly we've never not had an office, and like we are having folks deal with ego. Like there's so much wrapped up in physical space sometimes in a work environment, and I think to unwind that and think about work, like you just said, how will we think about work differently because of this? I think we will be forever changed for the better around that question, but it's going to take folks really out of their comfort zone to say, okay, what's best for my community and my studio, my firm, is that I get out of my office, is that I share things and we behave differently. So I think designers, we lead, and I think we don't even understand the impact that what we do to culture and to work environments. And this is the time where people need us. I had a client reach out to me 2 weeks ago and said, we designed their space last year and it really transformed their business. And they said this was the hardest 2 weeks of their life, because the thing that brought them all together and changed who they were as an organization, they can't come back to. So that notion of physical space and the power of design that can really change an organization. And then when it's gone, the yearning for that. So I think as designers, we need to never forget the power that we have to help people.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Rhonda, as a client, as an end user, what about your expectations around design at this time, the firms that you work with, the designers that you work with, and then moving into this kind of post-COVID moment?
Yeah, I think just thinking a little bit more about what Betsy said too there, and, the human relationships, I keep thinking about, as we all are, right? Thinking about what life is like when we do return back to the office. Well, we've proven that we can be clearly successful working from home. So what are the reasons that we are going to need to go back to the office? Well, either because we want to, because we miss that human interaction, we want to see each other, or, maybe perhaps there's training requirement or something that we all have to be there. We have to be there together. So the individual spaces are going to become less critical, and those gathering spaces are going to become more critical, right? Because of the human relationships. Either you want to go for those human relationships or you need to. And so the collaboration type spaces are going to become more important, but yet what does that mean? I can't see everybody crammed in a break room together again. Or, do they need to be cleaned more often, right? Your head just kind of starts spinning. But how do we bring the human side of things back to the office, and embrace that? And so I think we'll be looking to our A&D community and our A&D team members to kind of help solve that requirement. Just from Oracle's perspective, we've been spending the last several years trying to make our spaces have more density, so we get more utilization out of that square footage. So here we are, we've got really dense spaces, and now every desk is probably not going to be able to be filled because of the density on that. So again, the other spaces are going to become more important.
Yeah. Amy, you're in an interesting moment. You're with Pivot is one of the largest dealers in the world, and you're in that interesting space between manufacturers and design firms. How do you see your scope as a dealer changing as we are again navigating what's now and what's next?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. First, I want to say I'm thankful that our team really hasn't been hit or impacted directly by this pandemic, and so just being able to rest assured that our team is healthy has been really important. But we're part of this. We're part of this ecosystem, and there's this delicate balance. And I have to think that, going into this, we were all working at this fast and furious pace, and, there was constant pressure to do more, with less, in less time, with pressure on budgets and things like that. And I think that it's interesting, right? I mean, there are obviously some things that we can do in the short term from a service standpoint to support our customers, and quite frankly, that we're being required to do to keep businesses going, which is great. But I think that this is turning into sort of an interesting set of constraints or a filter that really forces us to think about what is really critical, what is important, what do our clients value, and to lead with that first, as opposed to just, and I know I'm kind of generalizing here. I don't think that we always lead with just more, but I really do believe that it gives us an opportunity to think through what is the most important. So as I listen to Ronda talk about the office and even what Betsy said about what designers understand and do so well in terms of bridging people and behavior with space, it's an incredible opportunity to think about what is the most important part of that experience of being together, and let's highlight that, and let's lead with that, and let's pave the way for that to take place versus packing more people into space and getting jobs done on time. So,
and we probably need to have this moment of redefining what together means and looking at these kind of hybrid ways that we can connect and convene. I love, Rhonda, that you've got somebody sneaking up behind you there. But looking at these hybrid means where we're convening virtually with some folks, via Zoom, and some folks in an office. All of those things will matter. There won't just be one way to think about gathering and convening, just like there won't be one way to think about what a workplace is or what your home means. We talked about this on another webinar, that the notion of home has been completely redefined, because our homes now are a workplace and a healing place and a learning place. And, we're having food. We talked earlier about missing restaurants, and we're having now food delivered to our homes for a different kind of dining experience. We know that gathering will be redefined and work will be redefined. Meg, I want to back up to working from home a little bit. So I read a stat from the Society of Human Resource Management, and it said that 2/3 of folks working from home have never worked from home before. They may have taken a Friday afternoon off and worked from home, but for such a long period of time, how do we talk about working from home in the sense of normalcy, or how do we better orient people working from home? Because we're going to be facing this for a while, and this probably won't be the last time that we're needing to look at a long-term work from home arrangement.
Yeah, well, I think first of all, and we're just investigating this now, is that you have to get the data. This is the time to engage your entire workforce and do kind of a client survey about what it's like working from home. And then I think you have to look at that, and you have to say, if this is going to be, if 1/3 of our workforce decides that they're going to stay working from home when this is after this is over, it's one thing that we all had to go quickly and work from home.
Right.
It's another thing if we say, all right, now we need to think about ergonomics. Do we have to look at a different type of budgeting process for, equipment at home that, you would normally, it's a given you would get in the workforce, but you don't get at home. But then I also think that, we've become kind of our own lab rats, right? Because all of you in interior design and those of you architects, everybody knows that light and space is important, but when you're, in a confined space, especially, those types of things become important. And how, when you're communicating people, are they seeing clarity? Are they seeing the light around you when you're doing these Zoom things? I mean, I'm looking at all of us on here now, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, I look a little bit fuzzy. So I think the behaviors you have to learn how to accommodate the behaviors, and to be able to take that and say, all right, this is what we've learned, this is what works, this is what doesn't work, and what are we going to do about providing those resources to people?
And there's an equity moment around that, that making sure everybody is operating from the same platform, that everyone has access to the same equipment, to the same technology, and so that there is a complete cohesive experience as an employee, and then for clients and end users, so that they are benefiting from that experience as well. Betsy, you know, your team has had experience working from home in the past, correct?
Yeah, I started my business in co-working, so we were very highly mobile for the first 2 years.
Yeah.
I would say we were, and as an entrepreneur, I think you have a resiliency and a focus on what's in front of you, not what could be attitude, which I think serves me very well every day in this environment, because no one knows what, I mean, we're all just sitting here with a crystal ball trying to predict, but I think there's a lot of good in front of us, and I try to focus on that. I am an optimist, and I do think, I said earlier, we're doing our best work. I totally believe that. I think my team's more engaged than they have been, and I think that's because around this new normalcy, we're really trying to act like we used to. We have the same rituals, we do the same happy hours. I do cocktail making classes on Friday afternoons to try to teach people what a real cocktail looks like. So we try to do these things that are sort of culturally significant to us, that really kind of connect us, touch us, but really are threads of how we were before. And I think normalcy, because I agree, I think we're not going to wholesale all go back. So what does that look like, and how do you have continuity with that with folks in the future that maybe are, you know, present physically and not present, you know, digitally?
Yeah, this question, somebody had a comment that popped up in chat, but I was on a webinar yesterday talking about a future employee benefit will be the investment for employees by an employer, investment in home offices, and making sure that all of your employees, again, have that ability to work from home when they want to, and then like the situation that we're in now, when it's a necessity, when we have to work from home. But that will be in the realm of employee perks and benefits, that having your employer invest in making sure you have ample everything to work from home is again a future benefit that we're going to start seeing.
We saw that early on with some of our clients jumping on board and providing a stipend to make sure that their teams were getting set up successfully.
Yeah. With regard to your team and talking about those kinds of things, has there been conversation in your organizations about reevaluating work from home policies at all?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that this has sort of become the catalyst for looking at whether those policies are relevant and whether they apply across all roles. I would say, generally speaking, this has put us in a situation where everybody is eager to get back into the office. I mean, we had some folks that were working in the office even after the shelter-in-place, mandate went into effect. It was sort of like they had to kind of create a new habit. And but I think it's really, once you get past this idea of how to properly support someone so they have all the tools that they need to effectively do the work, understanding that there might actually be some advantages to, working from home when you need to be heads down, when you really need to concentrate or you need to be free from distraction. I think that's where we'll start to see jobs, and job functions that were typically very tied to the office loosen up a little bit in terms of being able to advantage of remote.
Yeah. I don't want to ignore reality out there, but certainly there are folks who are listening in and watching, and we all know of people, friends, relatives who no longer have their jobs, or who are facing a furlough or a decreased salary. All of those changes, that becomes a part of not just supporting employees physically with physical space, but there's emotional support. Again, we don't have crystal balls, but how can we think about the what's next for our organizations and for our industry? Because we know that everything is going to change with regard to employment. And I'd love for insight from all of you, how people can be prepared. They may have a very different future. And I'd love to get some insight from you all about, about that reality. It would be naive of us to not have that as a part of this conversation.
Well, I can jump in. I would say we talked about this before the call started. I feel like this is the time, and I'm a true believer in personal networks. This is the time to invest in your peers, not just your employers, but your peers. That is the tie that binds you through your career. And I think reaching out to people, connecting to people, doing virtual coffees, leadership and design has more availability now than maybe they had before to do that.
Right.
You could get a group together and facilitate maybe a panel discussion. I think your peers are just the absolute lifeblood of your career. And I would say, please develop and don't take for granted that network, because I would say I would not be the person I am if it wasn't for my design friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well yeah.
Rhonda?
Yeah, I would agree. Just reaching out and staying connected, just taking care of your own mental well-being is so important at this time frame too. The best that we can. I run from coffee to chocolate to wine over here to get by through the day.
It's a good
sometimes
recipe.
not in that order. But I don't know what the future looks like for any of us or at Oracle. We're trying to do things to get prepared for back to work scenarios in the office, but I think we're all just hoping that we're going to kind of come back to, I like to call it the temporary normal, not the new normal, but we're going to come back out of the temporary normal within a couple weeks, not within several months, right? So I think the next few weeks are going to be very telling on what the economy really means from all of this. From the perspective of, keeping our construction projects running. And that's going to be essential in a downstream effect for everybody, for all of us in the industry.
If you look at the recession, the last recession, which I do as my touch point, where there are a lot of people who are out of work, but there are a lot of other things that opened up. So you saw a lot of people who actually kind of left the traditional architecture and interior design profession, and they went to the Googles or the Amazons and all these abundance of things that popped up. Well, we don't have that abundance right now, but who's to say that there won't be cottage industries that won't pop up?
Right.
Even if you look at healthcare as an example, I think telemedicine is going to really take off because now people have been forced to use telemedicine. Well, I think that has an individual, if you find yourself having to find a different venue to work in, you have to have the entrepreneurial spirit. You indeed have to have the connections and the network that you all talked about, but you have to kind of put yourself out there. And I think you have to be somebody that's, take a pause from all the negative social media and, read Fortune and read these other magazines and find other avenues that you can take a skill set and you can parlay it into something else.
That's great advice. Amy, I think you were going to jump in with something.
Well, I just think about, our team first, and I think I've seen some incredible teamwork and people, who maybe before were sort of very siloed in terms of understanding exactly what, they needed to get done and jumping in and helping out and making sure that, everyone's kind of got a full plate. But I do think that some new services and new ways of engaging will emerge. It's been fun to see folks reach out and offer to work on a project basis and in a much more fluid and flexible way. So I think it's going to require that we're all adapting to this sort of situation and open to new ideas. We've certainly taken the opportunity to sort of prioritize our own learning and kind of what are some things that have been sitting there that we've always said are important that we've just not gotten to. They're kind of, isn't an excuse if you've got a little bit of extra time. So
right.
We've pushed some of those initiatives forward as well.
Meg, I loved your point about telemedicine, and there was just recently an article about kind of emerging professions as a result of this, and that whole arena of health, safety, and wellness consultants, and it will be an absolute necessity particularly from a design and architecture standpoint, to have those folks on teams in considering space going forward. Our whole definition of cleanliness and hygiene and what we're going to want and need around us when we enter any space, whether that's a workplace, whether that's a theater, or whether that's a retail entity.
Right.
We're going to be super conscious of health, safety, hygiene, and cleanliness. And already there are people ramping up and shifting and changing. There are universities that are starting certificate and degree programs in being health, safety, and wellness consultants.
I totally agree with that. I would say the general office environments are not clean. They get trash taken out and wiped down, and that's about it. And I thought about this tremendously. You know, we put all these surfaces, wood, marble, none of that really can be cleaned well,
Right.
and not to the point of a safety level. And so I do think Cheryl's exactly right. I think we're going to do code reviews like we do wellness reviews now. I think you're going to have to prove out your distances. Like what's the pandemic floor plan instead of the master plan? You know, how do we think about how you pivot to remote or semi, you know, occupied space? And I think we all are thinking the same things, and it's going to affect our business in really innovative ways. And I think not in fearful ways, but in ways that we can really drive, again, more expertise with our clients and really impact the world around us in better ways.
And we'll just be more conscious also of that whole layer, that whole team of people who keep buildings clean, who keep offices clean. They're going to be rethinking the materials that they use. This absolutely perfectly plays into the conversation around sustainability as well. Climate change, protecting our environment. It's all layered into that. Thinking about that, when we all have a day one back into the workplace, what do you think that day one is going to look like or feel like?
Happy.
I think, a certain amount of relief, but also maybe some trepidation. I don't think it's going to be day one. I think it's going to be, you know, a very gradual,
multiple day ones, right? Yeah.
Kind of progression back and easing into it. I think in an effort also just to acknowledge that we're all maybe feeling a little unsure about, but I think also too learning together. So there's no one right answer. And I think that it's going to have to be a collaborative approach, and we're going to have to rely on lots of different areas of expertise and perspectives to formulate what is, you know, sort of what are emerging best practices in this area. You know, so it's just asking and acknowledging what are folks thinking about, what are they concerned about, you know, first and foremost, you know, and probably, you know, kind of working in shifts. We saw that, you know, in Asia with some of the companies that came back online first. So.
Right. Very much a staggered approach, not everybody there at one time. Yeah. Meg, any thoughts on a return to work and day one from a HR and a talent perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Amy. I mean, there's some unknowns, but there's probably some things that we'll just do from a common sense perspective. And Betsy, to your point about the whole cleanliness thing, I mean, people, you know, there's the office that's going to get deep clean and those types of things, but people are probably going to be focused on their personal workspace. So I think that we need to be prepared for that. As I said earlier, this hoteling spaces, you know, that may go away. So I think we might be learning as we go, but we adapt. I kind of have this vision that everybody's going to come back and you're going to want to hug each other, but you're going to be you know, maybe everybody's going to do the elbowing. I think that the human connection, there's nothing better than having that face-to-face relationship. So I kind of imagine that, yes, there's going to be a little bit of trepidation, but I think there's just going to be a feeling of joy. And we're happy to see each other and deeper appreciation for relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think hugging goes away, you know. I think folks are just going to be a little bit more aware now, you know. But I'm optimistic too. I feel like, you know, we do thrive on human connection and being together, and that, you know, that's something that I think we'll all jump back into with both feet.
Yeah. And those. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rhonda.
Meg, you just said something that I thought was interesting, and something else that we've been thinking about, that, you know, the hoteling, or whatever you call it in your organization, the hoteling might not be as accepted or adopted,
Mm-hmm.
right? And do you say that because another user has used that space, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I think it'll be all about that. So it doesn't mean that, it may not mean that it goes away, but it may mean that there's a process in place before the next person goes into that room.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There'll be a heightened awareness about that.
Most definitely. And I think from our perspective, if people are more productive working from home, I see that you wouldn't have as many dedicated spaces because you wouldn't need it. Right. So now if people are and also to keep the quantity of employees in an office at any given time, maybe you're staggering the work days that they come in, for example. And so therefore, then that hoteling situation almost becomes more important. So how do you deal with the cleaning and the requirements of that space when you're increasing the hoteling situation? And that's just to be using your square footage wisely, and not having as many dedicated spaces that sit there idle for 60% of the time.
Right.
So,
But I think you also can think about the other proposition that if, let's just say hypothetically, a third of your workforce is going to work from home, right? Well, you may be renegotiating your real estate deal that you have because you don't need as much space. But you also might say, you know what, we're able to save some money here. We can take it and invest it in other ways for people who are working from home, or even the amenities that we're offering in an office. It changes that whole perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the space question could pivot exactly like you're saying, away from individual space, but more to community space, and that has to get larger, because I think you can't rely on the fact that people are going to come to work for that social and collaborative connection, less the focus work. So if we're trying to create flexibility in sort of that footprint, I don't know if space gets smaller. I think it just shifts where it goes and maybe gets
I
bigger.
agree.
Great point. Great point.
Yeah.
How can, and this is great because I know in our audience we have some product manufacturers who are really interested in this conversation. And so when we start talking about things like hoteling and free address and, assigned versus unassigned, potentially larger community spaces, again, thinking about how people convene and the importance of space, will we, and how we access space. When do you see, will this change? Will this be temporary? Will this continue? Will this just be the way that we're going to live from now on in thinking about terms of the workplace?
I think that's the unknown. I mean, look, we go in a grocery store today and now they have everything cordoned off so that you're 6 feet apart from people. And as you're going into the grocery store, you've got the sanitizer as you're going out. Is this going to be a temporary thing? I would hope that that's going to be temporary, that it's not going to be that rigid, but it might be something that ends up being an evolution, that, we're at point A and we just kind of have to ease, and we maybe don't know what point B is, but we're in this together and we've learned stuff, so we have the confidence to be able to go to point B, and then we adapt to that, and then we adapt to C, and just see how it plays out.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, my small firm, I think there's a lot of pluses to this remote work for us in terms of how people are able to have more control over their schedule. And we have a lot of folks who kind of like to work the night shift, if you will, the sort of graduate school model, and they're thriving. And it's kind of like unleashed people's personal preferences and how they do their best work. And I think I don't want to let any of that go. I also think we're more connected to each other because we're not together, and I don't want to let that go either, because there's a lot of good coming of like this interpersonal bonding that we're having because we have to work harder at it. We're more conscious of it. And I just think that's a lesson that I will never forget.
Yeah, that's great. Circling back to culture and maintaining culture, so intimately tied to that is wellness and well-being. And we were talking a little bit about kind of getting through this is requiring, I think, Amy, you, before we got on, used the phrase that this is a marathon and not a sprint. and how we need a certain degree of not only physical resilience, because we're going to require that, but also emotional resilience. How are you having the conversations about emotional well-being? It's such an uncertain time, and every conversation is, we don't quite have all the answers, and human beings and uncertainty aren't always naturally compatible. So how are you all navigating with your teams, with yourselves, with your families, emotional well-being?
I think the nature of, I'll just jump in, the nature of a, sort of a crisis that's, this widespread is that, it brings people together working toward a common goal in a way that when someone's experienced something individually, you have to sort of work harder to understand what's going on. And I think that it's been really important for us to, allow for whatever that spectrum of emotions that someone is feeling, to get that out. And, it's been really interesting just to see how the level of compassion and empathy and understanding and patience people have, it's so encouraging. And I think the thing that I'm thinking about is that we have to be careful that we don't rush to solve, that we do just sort of understand, okay, we're in this really fluid time and we don't have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
We definitely have people who are, experts in different fields that we can tap, that we can, work together with, but understanding that this is something that's going to continue to, I love the word you use, Meg, evolve. It's an evolution. Yeah. And that but I do believe that there's this kind of muscle memory that it won't be like, okay, we've drawn a line and now there's no going back. The new normal. It's something that's just kind of iterative. We're going to test and try some things and maybe they won't work. I just think about my kid, maybe people will clean up after themselves a little bit more than they did before.
Yeah. But that's the essence of that's the essence of design thinking, right?
Right.
Very true. Very true. Hey, there's a group of folks out there who, we all are living through this uncertain moment, but certainly the class of 2020 is having a bit of uncertainty. And, I'm thinking of all the students out there, juniors and seniors, who were worried about jobs that they may have had or internships. Any advice for that group of folks who are absolutely thinking about their future lives when it comes to earning money and having jobs? Any advice, any insight for students and job seekers out there?
I'd like to really kind of look to organizations like the AIA student, AIAS, and NOMA, and other organizations that can be a resource to us, that can help us figure out a way. Because right now, I don't think a lot of us are expanding or hiring right now. And it is impacting the class of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to see some help from organizations. And I know for a fact NOMA is already doing it.
Right.
To figure out ways that, we can provide virtual internships, maybe. And I think that's a new concept, because when you're new in your career, you kind of have to be there to experience, some of the things. But I think we have to find a way to think creatively and probably reach back out to these groups and, find a way to bring people back into the fold. Because it's a tough time for them right now. It really, really is.
Mm-hmm. And for their parents who are worried about them too.
Yeah.
Well, maybe this is a good challenge for those of us that do have jobs and, are employed right now, thank goodness, right? To be a little bit more open to take those calls and those emails and have a conversation to build the network, like Betsy was saying, right? Like, I have my job now because I talked to one person who talked to somebody else who talked to somebody else. Yeah. So maybe that's a good challenge for all of us to be a little bit more empathetic to them and just, talk to them and introduce them to somebody else that may lead to something when all of this is lifted.
Mm-hmm.
I would
We're all
say
going to have to be more expert in virtual mentoring and virtual networking.
Mhm. Yep.
say, rest assured, there's a talent shortage in design, period. So there will be a job for you. There absolutely will be a job for you. We do not have enough designers and architects to serve the clients that we have. That won't change. And so know that it may not be that you have the job before you graduate, but you will get that job, and you need to invest in your network and know that you bring a lot to the table. You've just gone through college and you didn't sit, you worked mobily. You have a lot of skills to give us because you are more facile with technology and you are younger, and hopefully, maybe not, but you have a lot of things to offer our changing dynamic in our firm from a studio model. So I would say just be optimistic and make those connections, because I know I will want to hire you because we want to grow the team. So I would say be proactive.
That's great. That's great to hear, Betsy. What kinds of things for students, and there are questions coming in, and there's a student asking, what do you want to see in portfolios? What do you want to see on resumes kind of in this post-COVID period? We know that you're going to want resilient, agile, flexible folks. What other kinds of things would you be looking for as we return to work?
I would say I want good communication skills. I think dispersed work requires you to be a good communicator and to be a proactive communicator. So I think that's the one thing that you really can either see someone's strength or weakness if they're not a good communicator and if they're not kind of able to self-manage. And I think students have to self-manage in their career. So they need to think about the skills that they have there and how that can translate to a remote, potentially half remote lifestyle in the office. And I would say, don't waste this opportunity. And I think firms aren't either. Invest, research, develop new skills, which was what we're doing right now, and then showcase that to us, because that's what we're going to want to build the future around.
Yeah, great point.
I think a lot about, we talk about recruiting, just the fit, the fit with an individual in the organization. And so really research, the companies that you want to be working with, and what you bring to the table, and bring that forward, because I don't think it's about just doing a job. I think it's about, sort of, again, back to some of the earlier points that were made, you're bringing your whole sort of self to that opportunity. And so where do you find stronger alignment, and maybe, weave that into the conversation.
Yeah. Rhonda, in your sector, what kinds of folks are you going to be looking for? What's the skill set?
Well, speaking from the real estate and facility side of things, project management, which is kind of the breadth of what I do, right? We manage construction projects. I have an interior design degree, so I started out in my industry in the A&D community before jumping ship over to the other side of things. And so, if there are folks that are finding themselves either laid off or in transition between careers at this point, the project management industry is also hurting for individuals. Yeah. And so, any little bit of experience that you have, whatever your passion is, I think there's, hopefully an opportunity out there for you that is your skill set that you can, again, through network and nurturing that network. I saw somebody post that earlier, through nurturing that network and finding the best fit for what is your skill set. And I was lucky to find that with Oracle, and again, that was just through the network. So again, project management is in a big deficit now as well. So like Betsy said, just be optimistic and hopefully that horizon is much closer than we fear.
Right, absolutely. And Meg, as somebody who's got talent in her title, what are you going to be looking for? What specific skill sets? What is Perkins & Will going to want to see on either in portfolios or in resumes? And not just for design. I mean, it's marketing, admin, from all of the other teams that are supported.
I think we're going to want to see your personal brand. Um, um, certainly the portfolio and the resume is important, but what is your story?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that's unique about you that's going to want to make me hire you? And so I think kind of being that memorable storyteller, and to be able to not just talk about what you did at school and your portfolio and what you learned, but how I'm going to apply that to Perkins and Will and how that's going to bring some added value, and just get me excited about that.
That's great. That's great. You know, I was reading a blog the other day, and it talked about, you know, this has brought out the humanity in all of us, and all the more reason that we need to work harder. Some people might need to work harder to show who they are, to show their humanity, and that it's that empathy piece again, which was incredibly important pre the pandemic. It's going to be incredibly important to get us through this. And then post-pandemic, that empathy that we have for one another is going to be incredibly important to hone that. Empathy isn't just, you know, we're not just born with it. It is a skill that must be honed, and to be able to demonstrate that in the coming time is going to be incredibly important. We are close to wrapping up, so I would love to get some closing thoughts from each of you around talent, the future, humanity, culture. I'm giving you a wide berth. But let's get some closing thoughts about navigating now and next, and what's going to be most important for all of us in what's next. And Betsy, I'm gonna do like that Catholic school thing and start with you.
Well, I would say each day I try to think about what are the things we're really doing well right now, because we really are. And I think there is a lot of messaging right now, and I try to keep mine focused on what we're doing right, what we're doing great, and I want to not lose sight of that, 6 weeks from now, 6 months from now, because I do think there's a lot of good in how we're connecting and collaborating with each other. I think we're closer than we ever have been, which is really unbelievable to think about a small firm getting closer when they go dispersed than being together. So I want to dig into that. I think people matter. Design happens through people, for people. And I think that as firms, that idea of kind of, having all the voices be heard, I think will kind of resonate, and I hope carry through as we move forward and create a more equitable, more sort of unifying culture within organizations where sort of your newest hire, your most, your sort of youngest talent has the same impact and the same seat at the table as, the people who lead the business. And I think that for me, I try to hold that model every day, and I think it serves us well. And I try to be transparent and optimistic and communicative. And I think those are skills that I'll keep moving forward. And I think my team gives me that back in spades. And I just think we got to focus on the positive. We're all going to get through this, and we're all going to be better for this. And I think that that's what I just try to keep in my forefront. And I think students, you wait, it's coming for you, and we want you. So just hold tight just a little longer, and then you'll be adding value that you never thought you could.
Perfect. Thank you for that Minnesota optimism, Betsy. Meg, some closing comments from you?
Yeah, I agree with absolutely everything that Betsy said, but I also think that there's a new way that we're going to be connecting, probably a new and better way that we're going to be connecting with our clients, because our clients are going through this at the same time that we are, and has design experts and has design thinkers. I think we want to be able to take that and the human experience and be able to parlay that into their needs, demonstrating empathy, but also saying, we can tackle this together. Here's what we learned. Here's what you've learned, and let's bridge that and find out what's going to be best for you as we move forward.
Perfect. Rhonda?
I think if it wasn't meant, a theme that came out of the conversation today is all around empathy, right? For your team, for your clients, for each other, for the students that are graduating now. So I think we just need to continue to encourage that empathy culture, and just show up and be present, and be realistic about what you love, and support that.
Brilliant. Amy?
Yeah, I think despite the uncertainty, I see us emerging from this stronger than when we went in. And I see us more mindful and more present and more personally connected. So I too am optimistic. I think, yeah, it'll be okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much to the four of you. And and we are closing out. And thanks again. And thank you all for participating. Stay healthy, stay happy, everybody. Thanks, Team IIDA.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Cheryl.